Hi, Jim. Really good to have you on board. Jim,
Lovely.
would it be really good if you could just tell, people, where your background and also a little bit, I'm really interested in, I know we've talked about it quite a bit, but your why, why is education so important to you? Because obviously the way you work, you obviously do work in multiple industries, but why is it so important?
Okay, so the first part of your question, my background. So pretty much a lifelong recruitment and technology guy, mostly recruitment. So that was my first job in sales recruitment, and it was in the technology sector with Howard Jackson, which is a long since gone company. Pretty much across all areas of tech. I was only really working for other people for about 2 years. And then I worked out that I could probably do a better job of this myself. So I became an entrepreneur. And then, sort of like, the condensed version is I have set up, founded, and exited two recruitment companies, which still are successful global large recruitment companies. I've set up a couple of technology companies which failed miserably, and then gone back into recruitment. I'm a founder, a shareholder, investor of Certify, which is an edtech. It's a digital certification company. And now with Brave, which is very much focused on C-level hires and building business development teams within the software sector. But throughout that whole journey, I've dealt with edtech companies, and I guess, being completely honest, it's the people that you meet along the
Mm.
journey. So you mentioned Gary Hyman. He was a big customer of mine. I'd hired for him when he was selling MIS systems with what was Capita Sims, when that was selling like hotcakes, and it was building its way to being number one in the marketplace before it wasn't. And there was another guy called Dave Blake, who was at RM for a number of years, and we just got to know each other very well. We've actually set up another company that I own, which is a sales training company for the
Mhm.
technology sector. We've actually got a whole syllabus which is purely for the education technology market. So even other businesses that I've had are with people that I've met in edtech.
Yeah.
So that's kept me in the space. You kind of always have, I guess, a favourite sector. I mean, now we deal with a number of sectors: retail, finance, manufacturing, do a lot of in police and intelligence and central government. But education is the one that I got the most contacts in, and I keep going back to, have the relationships. And then there's a little bit of I guess, not me, but there's an altruistic side to edtech. What I was finding was that, particularly with salespeople, they really liked the fact that they were selling into schools.
Yeah.
For the most part, they felt that their products were making a real impact on the lives and learning outcomes of children. And no doubt we'll talk about this, because obviously you've got companies that are set up by educators and teachers and have just got great intentions at heart. And then, of course, you get companies that get bought by private equity companies, and then the ethos changes slightly because they just want to see their money. And
Yeah.
and that's a sort of an interesting dichotomy in the marketplace. But yes, so potted history. That's how I started and remain in edtech. And just again for context, UK, internationally, higher education, further education, a lot of stuff with the sort of big university providers. And then I guess another area that's come in the last 4 or 5 years is the digital assessments, which is obviously across all areas of learning, but sort of sits as another marketplace attached to all of them. That we're doing quite a lot of interesting stuff in the assessment business, particularly around AI technology.
And AI especially. I know you talk a lot about AI. When we talk, you're quite a bit passionate about what AI can do.
Um, Passionate is quite an interesting way of describing it. I mean, I guess there's some fear, as in the Elon Musk quite rational fear that we don't want AI going too fast. But it's one of those where you kind of got to be in it to win it. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. But I guess anything along those is way out of my field of influence. But what we can see is where AI can be used to varying degrees of elegance in various product sets. So, of course, because of the way that tech works, there's always got to be a new thing that people are doing. I think AI is the biggest manifestation of that we've ever seen. Everybody's doing something with AI, and indeed feels the requirement to, and needs to report to their investors what they're doing and their customers. And we've seen some quite interesting bolt-ons.
Yeah,
And then there's organisations like Elastic. I don't know if you know them, the Australian assessment company that have kind of just been built all around AI. That are doing some stuff that you can really see is going to take a hell of a lot of time off of teachers, and I think we're rather giving teachers back time.
yeah,
Things like automated marking, where it's actually filling that gap between feeding all of the homework to a computer and just it spitting it out. It's a lot more elegant than that. It allows it to be split into different educational rubrics. It's digitized, and the teacher can just look at the screen and see, here's all the spelling, here's all the punctuation, here's all the meaning that's conveyed by the outcome that you wanted. And then
yeah.
another 7 of those, and then they just say, right, yep, we agree with that score, next. And you can see, if I was going to be a teacher, that would be the bit that I would be wanting to hack my head off. Hours of marking every evening. And with the teachers that I speak to, that's the one that consistently comes back, because people assume that you clock off at 4 o'clock, and you go to the pub or the paddle court, and that's not the case.
Oh man, I'm totally, the idea of it, that AI effectively is a tool, and it's a tool that we should definitely embrace, because I think there's a lot of benefits for, teachers, but also for companies as well. I don't know if you're seeing it, but it's a little bit like, like WhatsApp are now sort of going, if the manager in WhatsApp is not requesting AI as part of the skill set, then they're sort of going, well, that has to be a really good reason, or the role won't come up for recruit, for candidacy. What do you perceive that will happen more and more in education as well? Can you see that sort of type of thing where people will be expected to have an element of AI experience or skill set, or
Well, so we did a recent search for a chief product officer for an assessment company, and the number one criteria was they must have had experience of bringing AI into a product set. And when you think about it, I mean, I think that they were paying 175 grand for a chief product officer, which is not a bad budget. But imagine you bring in a chief product officer that doesn't have AI, then you go out and you get McKinsey's in for 2 grand a day for 2 years, or another AI consulting company that's probably going to cost you another couple of 100 grand, or you just bake that AI experience into your chief product officer hire, and you have it out of the box. And that was a tough search, because there's not many companies that have been doing this for a long time.
yeah,
I mean, Century Tech, that they have, I mean, they're really one of the groundbreakers in AI. But yeah, why would you not hire somebody that's got the AI? And interestingly, right, so, and a big chief revenue officer role with a similar company. Not number one criteria. It was about effective routes to market and how to organise a sales team. But a big part of it was, what AI tools can we bring that can make the boat go faster? And there's a lot. I mean, if you've not been pitched already, I would say that 90% of
yeah,
my incoming sales calls to us are companies who are either selling AI or CRM, or CRM baked with AI. Even now, getting cold calls from AI voice bots,
yeah.
which I personally find quite offensive. If you want to sell to me, do it with a bloody human. So yeah, I think in the jobs market, anything at that sales leadership product leadership, and dare I suggest, I imagine will come into the operational roles as well. Is that you really have to have an eye for it. Otherwise, your competitors will do it better, and they will eat your lunch, and they will end up selling more than you. I think that's and also, again, as I'm talking to you, remembering other stuff, coding. We've had another company, a great customer of ours called Cellcat.
Okay.
So they're a timetabling company in the university sector. I can remember, I can talk about it now. So because they launched it this week, a new completely AI enabled timetabling system for universities that is taking all of these extraordinarily complex parameters, all the students, what the rest of their timetable looks like, availability of rooms, availability of teachers, availability of any particular equipment, routing, where it will take, how long it will take everybody to get from their last lesson. So it's just like stuff that has long been out of the domain of a room full of human beings working this stuff out, and they've now layered AI on top of it. But the coding is largely AI. The way that they've got from flash to bang, and obviously in EdTech, we know there's some horrible coding stories where behemoths have fallen over because they've not been able to launch products properly into the cloud. And it looks like Cellcat have actually, done the impossible, pulled it off, and now got a product that is fully AI enabled, AI coded, that they've launched this week in the universities market. So so to a long answer to your very short question,
it's good.
do you think AI will become a differentiator in the sector and in jobs? Like, yeah, 100%.
Jim, no, it was a comprehensive answer. I think it was really like
a wordy one.
Do you know what? You're right. I think things like AI and products like that, which enable you to code, are great. I think you have to put a bit of effort into them, of course. But I'm with you. I think in the long term, it's going to be it's going to be amazing. There's also things like Bolt and so on. They're really good as well. But yeah, there will be this point. I think the key, actually, I think somebody said to me, it'd be where they're trying to look for the first $1 billion company with only one person in it. I think is the unicorn.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Nikki. So I have forgotten to mention, I'm also a school governor. So I use the Governor Hub, which is a big chunk of the key. Which again, I mean, it's and you might well ask the question, well, why, Jim? Why did you become a governor? So let me give you the wordy answer to that one. It was first and foremost because I felt that. Well, firstly, now I'm mostly based out of Bournemouth. I've got the time, and I felt that I really needed to understand the education sector at a much deeper level, and give something back at the same time. Knowing some of the horror stories there's not a lot of horror stories in education, right? We'll probably come across them, but there's been some companies that have done some fairly sharp practicing, and schools are definitely a little bit rabbit in the headlights with technology. They're not sophisticated buyers, and I don't mean that to make them sound unsophisticated, but if you're selling a piece of software to a bank, it's going to be a very different experience rather than selling to a school. And I just wanted to put myself in that. So I'm both a school governor and also a sort of a tech advisor to a multi-academy trust. And I can sort of bring my knowledge of the sector to that. And at one point when we were having an issue where it was allowing our parents to go into debt on school meals, I was able to actually pick up the phone to a chief exec of the software company and say, hey, can you stop your system doing that, please? To which they sorted that out. And that got me, they thought that was wonderful. And it was just nice to be able to do it. So yeah, there you go.
No, I think it's amazing. And you spoke when you said about Governor Hub, and obviously as we're recording, probably about a day or so ago, obviously the key just got reinvestment in, which I think is interesting. And in all fairness to you, you did tell me, obviously, probably a few days before that they were going for investment rather than a purchase. So that's quite interesting.
Yes, well, I have a lot of conversations with a lot of different people about that particular deal. So I think for most of the listeners, it's, I don't know, is it me or is it Arbor really that's the sort of jewel in the crown? I mean, it's the key group, but it is that core MIS system. I mean, look, then the Governor Hub is a great product,
Yeah,
but I think it was I think that everybody thought that Arbor was going to get bought by one of the big boys. I mean, the big one that I heard that was in the frame was Power School.
yeah,
So that's the number one system in the US. Big private equity backers, lots and lots of cash. They've kind of saturated the US market. They've got to go other places. So everybody expected Power School to be perhaps the people that got hold of them, and then there was various other consortiums with some of the other MIS, the global players.
yeah.
And then I got a little nod from somebody I know very, very tightly in that community that it wasn't going to be a trade sale, that it was going to be investment. And they very nicely said, and probably the right move because they've got such a strong team. And I think in James Wetherill and Chris Kenyon, that is certainly the case. I mean, who better to take them to the next stage in their development? But as I've sort of said to a few people, and firstly, I've got a massive amount of time for James, who's obviously led on the Arbor side. I've known him for a number of years, and I think he's a great guy, and he's held his nerve throughout this, and did a phenomenal job. But Sims was the Navy,
Yeah,
and James and Arbor were the pirates, and now Arbor are the Navy. And you've got to work out who's going to be the pirates in the marketplace, because I don't know if you have any thoughts about it. I can't see Sims turning this game around now. I think was it 2 months ago where Arbor became number one, and I think I
they got
saw
most scores in.
a press release the other day that Sims is going to release their new product in 2026, and I think they've been saying that for 15 years now. So it's just it's crazy. And here's something else interesting to me anyway. So I've worked across a number of different software marketplaces and vertical sectors therein. And the one perennial problem that we see is that if a company is 20, 25 years old, they're either they've done the cloud migration, done
Yeah,
it well, they've bought a young up and coming supplier and kind of migrated it over, or they're in the middle of doing that, or they're failing miserably at it. It is just a generational technology shift, and no doubt there'll be others coming forward, but in no other market has an organization that's been way out there as number one failed so badly than in the schools marketplace, particularly around the Sims product. And I say that, having, hired for them, I still keep in touch with one of the MDs that was there for a while, who I won't mention his name because, he made an absolute fortune out of that particular organization. And, the model, which was told to me, in a pub over a steak and a bottle of wine, was that every year, once they consolidated that market, every year they would sit in a room with the analysts and work out how much can we put our product up this year without causing the customers to move to another product. So not even like how much can we put it off without them exploding or having funding issues or complaining. No. We can deal with all of that. We just won't turn up at bet. So they can't complain. And they would work out how much the market would stand. And that was their strategy. And whilst they were implementing that cow milking strategy, they weren't getting their ducks in a row on the product side of things. But again, I'm probably trying to teach the grand wizard of MIS how to
No,
suck eggs
no,
here. I
no.
mean,
You know,
is that
you're right. No, no. I think you're right, Jim. I think that I think the thing is, it all comes back to really, it was in the sense of takes all the things you just said and brings it back. And I think I think in education, trust. I remember talking to Kathleen about it in the sense of where does trust is important in every market. But in education, it's almost a little bit
yeah,
further up. To sell into the market to be successful, you need that additional bit of trust, and actually to stay at top on the top, you need to maintain that trust. And actually, I think they just lost sight of that. I think there's an element where they didn't deliver on time. Well, they definitely haven't delivered on time. They then started taking advantage of their market share, like you just said, and I think they also then I think there was a lot of support and faith, and a lot of people who didn't want to move, but then started almost being forced to feel they had to move, and that's not a good place to be in any market. But I think going back to your point, will they get back up there and be the pirate? I think it's going to be really a big struggle because unless they change their name and brand, people have long memories as well in education. As you know, how many people have you moved around from one company to another company in education? And I think education people normally, I think in a lot of the cases, stay in education, so the memories stay around for a long time.
they
So
do,
I'm not sure how they will.
and I think we've spoken before about how schools buy
Mm.
products, and I knew this before I was a governor, but it was the first time, and it was actually a key subscription, and you have to talk about every pound that you spend. And it
Yeah,
was right. Do we upgrade to the sort of the premium? I think it was an extra. I don't know. It might be something like 25 quid a month, something outrageously small. And it went to the head, and her decision was, I'm going to phone my 5 heads that are all my pals,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
going to ask them if they've got it, and then ask them if it's good value for money. And I think that word of mouth in schools is incredibly powerful. And when you put that as an analogy with banks, a bank is never going to say, well, what are you using? Because it's highly competitive.
Yeah.
And then, funnily enough, in the police sector, the one thing that you do, if the Met Police is your customer, and most people would think, well, hey, look, Met Police use our open source intelligence software. All the other police forces are just like, right, well, we're definitely not using that, because they all want to be doing something that the other police forces aren't. So schools is really unique in you really must have good relationships, and look after your customers, because your customers are your best advocates, and your best advertising.
Here's a question for you, actually. I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. So, at the moment, the government had just come out, the DfE had just come out, sorry, and said, we're going to create this framework for MIS, and ultimately, any new MIS can come on there anytime. Sort of trying to open up the market a little bit, and obviously, that both of us know that basically the margins are quite slim when it
Mhm.
comes to MIS. But from your perspective, if you were a new entrant, and maybe actually this is more than just MIS. If you're coming into the education sector to basically, to try and win, because that's what I always talk about. Basically everybody wants to win. You
Yeah.
want to basically sell your product and win. What would be some of the key things that you would consider from a perspective of people? What sort of type of person is needed? What sort of how would you build out your strategy to win?
That's a very, very interesting question. Now, from an MIS perspective, and I have been giving this a lot of thought, because there are a couple of companies
Hmm.
out there. I mean, obviously, so most of our listeners will know, after Arbor, you've got Broncom, and then there's quite a big chasm, and then really you've got Compass, Juniper, and Go for Schools. Now, Juniper have been a bit of a sleeping giant in MIS for a little while, they've, as you probably know, they bought a Belgium,
Yeah,
Bulgarian,
Hungarian.
Hungarian, thanks Nick, uh, MIS system, which is both for UK use, and they've got some strategy around international. And that's another thing that we need to talk about, because there's been very few breakouts in
Absolutely.
in international, right? And I think that's because of the nature of how the MIS software works. But you know, because of what happened with Sims and the biggest player failing miserably like 15 times in a row, I mean, it is. I can only equate it. It must be like not even like trying to toss, you know, heads 10 times in a row. It's like trying to do like the zeros on a roulette ball 10 times, a roulette wheel 10 times in a row. How often they've failed to do it. So it's not easy, right? And it was always told to me that MIS was this kind of really difficult to create product. But back to your question, I think the other companies are just going to have to do that slow burn, steady sales tactic. I think with the way that Juniper are doing it different, because they've acquired 14 companies now. They've got sort of 14,000 schools that are using something of theirs,
Yeah.
and they're kind of coming from the outside in, where other, you know, people like Arbor, you know, it was an MIS, and then they're increasing the functionality of the MIS, and now they're bolting things onto it. Juniper have done it the other way around, and they've got all of the applications around it, and now they're going to come in. And I was speaking to them a little earlier, and they've got a sales strategy which, you know, I can't divulge, but is one of the cleverest things that I've heard about how they're going to start eating into the marketplace. And I think, you know, what one thing, and James has always been really, you know, James is not like an anti-competition guy. He really thrives on having competition, and I think because, you know, it is healthy. It was very unhealthy what Capita did. I mean, Capita are Capita, right? They're a bunch of accountants, greedy, grubby accountants running a software company. That's what they are. And you know, they just bought up everybody, and then they hike the prices. I think what we're going to see now, hopefully, is some real innovation in the marketplace. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out over the next couple of years. But I think, you know, schools, like other businesses, they're very, very different. They operate very differently, and it's probably likely that different MISs will service that marketplace in different ways. And I've already heard of a special education needs provider that's got an MIS that's very bespoke to that particular marketplace. And I think we should see a much richer environment where multiple players can bring different stuff into the market and do what competition does, which is sticking a rocket up the other companies' arses to actually improve and innovate. Because I guess the other slightly dirty secret about edtech is that, you know, and this has probably changed like in the last couple of years, definitely, but you'd look at an edtech product and you go, what's this? This looks like something that used to boot up on my computer circa, you know, 1989. You know, and it has been underserved with too little investment. So I think that's turning around now, but that's certainly something that the industry's been a little bit guilty of.
I think it's interesting, and it comes back to people really, but a lot of the, you know, and probably for the good reason. So sometimes I remember, you know, the number of times you know, people who have been in schools go, I've identified a problem, here's a solution to that, and in some cases you go, amazing, great innovation, great entrepreneurial sort of spirit. But the thing is, I think everyone needs to understand that to be successful, though, it takes more than a product. It takes, you know, you have to build a solution, and that means the experience the customer has is, you know, from the point of understanding that product and that there is a product to solve that problem to the point where somebody's selling it and everything else. And so I think sometimes, especially tech-led businesses, don't focus enough on the marketing and the salespeople. You know, they sort of seem to sort of go, well, we can, that it will just sell itself. And I think, you know, there's an element where I think you have to be really honest with yourself and go, the bit I built this product and I might be quite good
Yeah.
at it, but actually the bit I'm not very good at is selling.
It's
So
just the
I need to
selling.
bring somebody
No,
in.
I agree completely, and it's interesting as well that I have a little saying which is it's the product, stupid, right? At the core of it, you've got to have a good product. Now, have companies been extremely successful at selling a substandard product? Yeah, you can do that for a little while. You can do that until somebody comes along with a better product and it gets out in the marketplace. And I think investment will follow a good product. Another marketplace which was utterly dominated by one player
Mm.
is the teacher recruitment platform sector. Now, TES had that absolutely nailed
Yeah.
for a long, long time. And again, for our viewers that don't know, TES used to be a supplement, the Times educational supplement. It was shoved in the Times every Wednesday, and it was just something that people threw on the floor unless they were a teacher, because it was aimed at teachers. And at the back of it, you'd have all the senior jobs for teachers. And then that became a recruitment platform. They put it online, and then the private equity boys and girls came in and they made a bunch of acquisitions, and it was grow, grow, grow at any rate. And they had one of the most, I use aggressive in a non-pejorative way, the most aggressive sales team, like floor of people in London, in Manchester, on the phone, selling, closing, putting people in planes, sending them to sell it to international schools all over the world.
Yep.
In fact, I'm going to say we have, as an organisation, probably placed 25 people that are ex-TES, trained salespeople or sales leaders. A lot of them that we've actually headhunted directly out of TES. But they had some absolutely great salespeople, and they were one of the big success stories. With that cash, because it's an expensive product, right? It's one of the most expensive products that a school can buy.
Yeah.
And no doubt a little bit of hubris setting. You get used to that revenue. They're buying companies, they're not really integrating them properly, but they're still selling, selling, selling. And then all of a sudden, My New Term comes along, written by Wayne Cartmel, an ex-teacher that spotted a really gnarly problem in the market. And it's funny because I've got a lot of time for Wayne, because he's a scrapper, and he's done amazing things, and he's literally the David that's just about to kill Goliath, I think, in the next couple of years. And I think the problem, as I understand it, because my teacher friends used to tell me that you apply for a teaching job and you want to apply for, let's say, 5 teaching jobs, you have to go through this rigmarole of a different form-based system for every role. So it was actually cutting down the amount of natural movement within a marketplace. And Wayne and My New Term solved that problem. And then on the back of that, you have the big jobs market that competes with TES. But it's a lot cheaper than TES.
Yeah.
And now it has organically got to the point where it is a comparable service with a much, much better front end for the teachers. An absolutely beautiful product, which pretty much comes free with the online service. And I think over the next 2 years, I predict that unless TES do something incredible with their product, they're going to see an absolute revenue shed collapse in a similar way that Capita Sims did, and it will end up getting sold for a song. That's my bold prediction, and I think that they're one of the most interesting companies in the marketplaces to look at. But
HR it's definitely grown an interest in I think in the ed tech world. I think for sure, and I wouldn't surprise me at all what you were just saying. I think it's interesting because I think a lot of companies, especially I think sometimes when they're PE back, sometimes anyway, to basically get them to pivot and in some cases disrupt their own market. I think it's really tough. So Sims definitely should have disrupted its own market, and it didn't. It should have gone for the platform that, because they have so many customers, be the platform, allow other people to work on that platform, be the Microsoft basically, and
Yeah.
they're in a much better place, but they didn't want to do that. So that was
Did
very
they, Nick?
unfortunate.
Do you know? Is there a blockbuster Netflix story in here? Did they get an
Absolutely.
opportunity to buy Arbor early days and just have a completely different trajectory?
Yeah, there was definitely I definitely know that there was offers from certain MIS to go, why don't we be your MIS? Now that could have even been by way what white labeled or bought or whatever. So there's definitely offers that went into Sims to be different. It might have been before they got bought, by the way, but I think they definitely went in there. There was
Right.
also the platform piece. That was and I'm not trying to blow trumpets or anything, but that was talked about by myself when I was there and everything else. There was this thing where I think it was just to go into your own market and disrupt it in the way of we're going to do something and then not do it, and then be also, it's just too hard, because you basically it's not like any other MIS where you sort of go, I'm going to come in. By the way, this is what we do. We don't do all the things that Sims do at the moment, but we do enough for a primary school. Primary schools go brilliant, fantastic. We buy it because it's a little bit cheaper as well. Amazing. Sims always had to, if it replaced, and they wanted to do exactly what it did now, has to replace what it does. Because always people will go, well, you're not doing half the things that it used to do, so why am I buying this? Why am I continuing to pay for it? So it was always going to be difficult for Sims because ultimately they were the biggest player and they had the largest amount of functionality and people had that high expectation, and so they had to meet that expectation. Where if they initially went out to like an international market or did something a little bit different and said we're going to be a platform for a while or wherever it might be, then it would have been an easier one. You could have got something out into the market quicker, and secondly, you could have tested your hypothesis while continuing with Sim 7. So it would have been less disruptive, I think.
Mm. And what are the other hot markets then outside of MIS and the recruitment front?
I think HR is the next big one. I think that that moment. I think there's definitely a rush. There's definitely a lot of white space out there where, or green space or blue space. I forget which word everyone uses. But there's a lot of schools that are looking now for HR. I think it's really interesting. I talked to somebody the other day where finance was the first thing everyone bought when they were in at an academy. Then it became MIS, and now we're sort of moving towards the HR and compliance as well. The guys from IAM, I think they've done a really good job. I think they're
I am
really,
compliant.
yeah, that's a
And,
great company.
and when you say HR, are you talking about them buying a HR package, or are you talking about just a full outsource? Where do you
No,
see the
no,
market going?
no. I think it's a little bit like what the keyboard. With I want to say FaceHead, but it's FES as well. I always forget which leads, but basically you know the guys up in Wakefield way. They sold to um
Oravia.
no, it's FaceHead. I think is actually that is the main name they go with, or Fusion.
Yeah, Fusion. They got bought by Arbor, right?
Yeah, the key. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and a great company, and they've done some great things, and I think that they're they've got now the backing with the key, so I think that they will do well. They will do really really well and grow because they've now got the reach as well. I think, which is where they were finding it a little bit difficult at one point.
Mm. And I think MHR are also selling their white labeling their product to a few other players. I'm not sure if that's even widely known in the market. I don't know if the customer actually knows that they're buying an MHR product essentially that's just been badged by one of the other software vendors.
No, I didn't know that at all.
Mm.
So yeah, I think of the other products, which I think is going to, part of the framework from government is about interoperability. So I think what they're saying is the new framework is going to almost, well, it's not going to force, but it's definitely going to have in there that basically a stronger level of interoperability with the DFE and other suppliers. They're definitely moving towards or wanting to move towards one, gathering the information when they want, which means that they can test policy they've got the statutory return information sooner, but also I think it's because they want to open up the market to one, other suppliers, but two, to basically having the data available for things like AI and reporting and insights. So I think that is going to be an interesting place.
When are you expecting there to be like the fully published new details of this? And can you just give a bit of background for our listeners about what is it? Is this a Rachel Reeves?
So it's a dear fee, but it's part of the policy to I think probably open up the markets a bit more, trying to get better return on investment for schools and mats. But it's come out recently. There was it was the initial conversation was just yesterday, where they were opening up to suppliers and saying, by the way, this is what we're planning to do. They're opening up at the moment just purely to allow people to ask questions and things. But the
consultation period.
Yeah. But it's but basically the idea. There was a number of bullet points, but the key ones really were: one, it's going to be a framework for purchasing. Two, anybody, any new MIS who wants to come in can come on the framework as and when. The third thing was definitely about interoperability and opening up the data to more. One, to enable probably other suppliers to come into the market easily, because there's obviously the whole, SIMS and the rest of the market or the other suppliers challenges at the time were finding it hard to get the data from SIMS. So I think they're making that open more.
So it's interesting. So my understanding of the market is that you've got Wand and Group Call, who are effectively the interoperability tool for this sector. Does that not put them out of business potentially?
I don't think it necessarily puts them out of business. I think what it does is you just flipped. Oh, there you go. It doesn't put them out of business, but I think what it does, it enables more people to come into the market, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Going back to your point about innovation, we need to make it easy for people to come into the market. It might make their jobs. No, I don't think so, because I think like as with Wand, they were given the contract by a DfE to basically extract attendance data and put it up, place it up in the local authorities, so local authorities can get the attendance data. I think what it would do is potentially give them more opportunity to drive more data out of an MIS. So I think that it might actually, in some ways, enhance their overall proposition and add more value potentially.
Yeah, so that they would actually become the conduit for that interoperability by providing all of the API architecture.
So I say that, but then if you go back to AI might in the future, and I do say might, be the conduit to basically extracting data if the data wasn't as sensitive as it is. So that's why I'm sort of going maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess we've been talking very, very boring back office systems, education systems. Interestingly, one of the schisms, if you will, in the market that we see, and again, like I think salespeople are always a good bellwether for this, is people that have sold content and curriculum front of house in the teacher's hand tools don't want to sell MIS, HR, finance, analytics. They're just it's they don't want to do it, and I don't know, maybe it's a left side of brain, right side of brain difference. But yeah, that's one thing that we do see. It's like even if it's more money, it's like, oh no, I just like selling the stuff that's actually in the children's hands, and that bit, which I guess you put more into the sensory tech that we've mentioned. That's the bit I think that's going to be massively disrupted by AI, both in terms of learning it, how children learn. Like, what is the point of writing an essay, right? Because, and interestingly, so you've got companies like Turnitin, so the global leader in plagiarism detection software. Their whole raison d'etre blown out of the water overnight. And and immediately, and I happen to know the guy, really, really good guy, that went in to turn them from being a plagiarism detection business to an AI detection business. Although I suggest that that is a lot more difficult, because even now, with my very, very thin knowledge of this, is that there's children are being shown several layers of abstraction of taking your AI and then rewording it in your voice, and there's so many workarounds for that. So
Yeah,
that's an interesting one. So we're going to have to think about how we adapt lessons and learning to take that into account. And there's another really interesting company that we're working with at the moment called WeVideo. I don't know if you've heard of them. So they're largely based
okay.
in the States and in one of the Nordic countries, Stockholm. The guy that runs it, or the guy that founded it, Bjorn, I can't remember his surname. He's a serial European edtech, Scandinavian, blue hair, blonde hair, blue-eyed entrepreneur. So he was behind Inspera, the assessment
Yeah,
company, and he set up WeVideo. And their sort of their thing is, in 3 years, kids will not be writing essays. We are in the generation of the video creators. They will pull down a bunch of different video segments. So if you're talking about the Vikings, you're not writing about it. You're putting pictures of boats and schematics of boats and helmets and raiding villages and geography, and creating a visual format for that.
yeah, absolutely.
So, and of course, it makes sense, because a lot of kids are just becoming good at doing editing on their phones. So they've got a platform, a whole learning management system. They've got all of the editing tools, and then they've got the areas where everything is sent out and submitted from the teachers. So yeah, I think that they're going to be doing is they've just started breaking into the UK. In fact, I'm not sure if I've introduced you to the guy up there, a guy called Rob Sparks. He's ex Lucian and campus management, big. He's a Canadian living in Florida, so he's heading up the global strategy for their expansion. And I think within the next 2 years, they could be the new company to watch, because as far as I'm aware, no one else is doing that.
I think it's beautiful. Do
Specifically.
you know what, Jim? So I did a presentation at Guess, and basically it was all about and actually most of this, by the way, tech is there. But you sort of go, can you imagine if you're a teacher, you get up in the morning, you go into a shower, it's the right temperature, it knows who you are, because everything's connected, and you even go to the loo and it basically tells you how much water you need to be drinking and that sort of stuff. All of this is there already, by the way. But then you go and you get into the car, and you're a teacher, and you basically the first thing you do is you ask your automated car, tell me exactly what students, how they did in their test last night, and all their homework. Give me some insights. Tell me, areas that I might need to concentrate on going forward. In the sense of what, is there something urgent I need to talk to any of the members of the class in today? And then all that feedback comes back to you, just like you just said about but in the sense of, by the way, this one child used a bit too much, maybe too much AI, found that out. Or by the way, this one child, Johnny, amazing, here is his, his submission, and basically it's on the screen, when you're in the back seat, and it basically shows you some of the key points that you should be thinking about, and why it's scored the way it was scored, like you just said, about the automated marking tools. And you start talking about this, and everyone's going, "Oh, well, yeah, make life easier. It's amazing." Then you go, "It's all there. It's just not connected together." And
Yeah.
that's the truth. It's just not connected together. Everything's there in their own little bits. And I think that's the same with education. I think the person who brings it all together will eventually be the winner. And I don't mean back office. I agree with you 100%. Do you know what? You're the first person who's ever said it to me because that's always what I thought. Where no one really wants to go over the bridge between classroom and back office. It's almost like back office is there and everyone stays in back office, or they go into the classroom and they stay in the classroom, but no one goes that. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's really interesting. I tell you, if that company is moving down that road of AI generated sort of classroom tools, I'm up for it. I think it's amazing
Yeah. Excellent.
because we have to get to the point of individualized learning.
Well, I think that's what Century Tech have certainly been doing, right? It's creating a individualized learning journey based on, each student's sort of approach to learning and how they do it. I mean, it's one that I've not looked properly under the bonnet of the actual package, but it certainly looks. And I think, we're, for whatever reason, we are recognizing the very different ways that kids learn, and particularly kids with neurodiverse issues.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to, and I mean, that's another massive subject, right? The school that I'm a governor of, we've got, it's in one of the deprived areas of the southwest of the UK. We have an extremely high sort of 60% plus. The kids are special education needs. So the challenges are there, and as I understand it, that's one of the big budgeting challenges that's actually hit this government, is that special education needs has had to be cropped, because not only have you got kids with very clear needs, you've then got, I think, probably a slight issue with overdiagnosing, and then of course you've always got the small significant minority of very sharp elbowed parents that want to enhance their child's ability to get a better score by applying for special education needs status, so that they get longer in for exams and a whole bunch of other things. And we've seen all of that in our school. So again, having the tools that can help schools in that area is going to be extremely useful.
Oh man, you talk about the budget stuff. So we have a friend. Well, one of the companies we work with is does some of the accountancy for local authorities, and in every case, the biggest problem that every local authority has is really comes down to send and the budgets. A lot of it is down to them in the sense of then they don't have the right processes. One of the companies we work with actually also is now looking at sort of supporting the send area, because it's right in the sense of local authority, especially because it's right in their sort of wheelhouse. But the biggest problem really is you sort of hit it in the head, really, is where there's no communication between on the local authority level. So people can, if they want to try and play the system, they can, and those who don't know how to play the system probably will never get what they need. So it's a bit of the actual whole process at that moment is completely
that has always been the case. And as a governor, I've had to sit through several hours of training and exams on the Governor Hub, particularly around the safeguarding stuff. And there's a lot in there right now. The ability for different systems to talk to each other, whether it's education, health, police, has always been a massive problem. So in one of our other vertical markets, which is sort of police intelligence and detection, this has been going right back to awfully the Ian Huntley murders, where it wasn't picked up that this guy was working in a school and he got previous, and it was because records weren't talking to each other. And obviously you've got sort of GDPR issues. So that is another area where technology companies really need to come together and work within the framework of GDPR across a number of government agencies to try and work out which kids need to be identified and elevated as potentially at risk. Because without wanting to sound too political, and you might need to just edit this bit out, is at the moment there is a big push in a lot of schools to try and identify young boys becoming radicalized as super misogynists. And I've had to read a bunch of stuff around. I'd never thought I'd be reading about Andrew Tate in my in my school duties, and that I need to be watching for kids being radicalized into being super misogynists or white nationalists or all these other things that they are trying to get under the sort of prevent scheme. It's all a bit crazy, but again, that's part of the safeguarding agenda. You're looking very, very
You're right.
confused here, Nick. You're clearly not a governor.
No, no, I have to say.
Yeah, so basically, you know, and I'm actually the safeguarding governor at the school, so I have to take a look at this. Is yeah, teachers and governors are supposed to be very highly aware of the potential for children, particularly young boys, being radicalised by online influencers, either to become Islamic terrorists or white nationalists. It's just, and in that white nationalism, there's the sort of like extreme misogynist. But you know, some of it is just largely hype, and you know, all on the back of that bonkers drama that everybody thought was a documentary, and even Keir Starmer said it was a documentary. Do
Adolescence.
you remember the one?
Adolescence.
Adolescence, is that the one? Yeah, I try not to watch TV. It's certainly not that absolute nonsense. But yeah, so they pick something that has never ever happened in a cohort of people that have never been known to commit that particular crime, and create a docudrama. And before you know it, all the politicians are on daytime TV talking about how schools really need to look out for this. And of course, that filters down to the teachers level. They're all looking for these, you know, these crazed kids that are going to go and stab someone because they saw something on Instagram. It's just, anyway. Feel free to edit that or keep it in. I don't mind.
It's beautiful. Oh man, amazing. Amazing. I'll tell you what, this fireside chat has been far. It has literally gone across many different types of subjects as well. So, but brilliant.
There was a bunch of stuff that I thought would be interesting, and I think we've just about we've got through it, haven't we? Really, it'd be interesting to see. So, again, I just answered my own question before it even popped out of my mouth. It was like, what do we think? You know, how exciting is the edtech market for investment? And it's, well, I've heard two figures. So I have various information fingers in various information pies. Megabyte were very kind to send me their analysis of the deal, which they believe, although nobody knows, that the Arbor Key Group deal was worth 400 million. I heard today the number's closer to 700 million. So how hot the market is for investment, clearly you've got your answer right there. But, you know, firstly, what are your thoughts on those figures, and where do you see, you know, investment coming in? Because the market has been very quiet for a while. I mean, as somebody who recruits across this sector globally, the UK is probably the area that's hiring the least, and yet we've just had the best part of just under $500 million or nearly $1 billion, depending on who you listen to, come in for, you know, one of the hot new companies.
Okay, so the DFE did actually put a number on the size of the framework, and it basically put it as £1 billion.
Mhm.
So they said basically it's £1 billion market. So well, it's like, you know, 9.8 or something along those sort of lines. So it's basically £1 billion market. Sims, when I was there, was also in the days of, you know, Gary and everybody. I remember we got it valued by McKinsey at about $1 billion.
Mhm.
It's sold for $500,000.
$500 million.
So I think probably the key is probably closer to the 7 than the 4.
Yeah.
Would be my view.
Yeah, because they've got the key. I mean, I always think of it as Arbor, but that key is pretty much, you know, I don't know how many, what percentage of schools that's in.
It's like it is as high as what Sims was, I think. So
Yeah.
I think you're looking at, you know, 80 and close to 80%. I think of schools basically use, you know, Governor Hub and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
So
So
yeah, they're in a lot of schools.
yeah, yeah. So even 700 could be quite. I mean, what they do with that cash might be a more interesting question. So I'm sure it's not just so that James and Chris can buy themselves a spaceship or whatever. um, but uh, although I'm sure they'll be buying their wives something nice. But how much is going to be for acquisition, how much development, and are there any like obvious companies to go and buy now?
Yeah, I suppose you could complete your full set and have, finance, and I know they got Integris, but you sort of go, I suppose going back to your point of back office, I definitely, if I was them, wouldn't go entertain the front in the classroom because people don't associate the two, as we've both just been talking about. So there is more back office.
That's an interesting question, though, right? I mean, that is a division that I've highlighted, and you just said no, no, no. Those two things aren't going to talk. But why would a content and assessment system? So I'm in talks with a company who shall remain nameless because this is part of their strategy. Um, they're doing stuff in the assessment space. It's not like they're reinventing the wheel, right? Because we've got GL Education and got bought by Renaissance. So
Yeah.
their idea is they are the diagnostic. They test the children, and then they will be able to provide the content and curriculum to bring them up to where they need to be. I don't think they've done that yet. Again, they're the Navy. I'm speaking to one of the pirates that's looking at building the assessment and then straight into that content. But why would it not be that your MIS system is, or your back office systems aren't talking to the front end system? I mean, it is all about the journey of the child. And look, I mean, I guess it comes down to if you've already got MIS, finance, and HR tied up, and that you can't tell the private equity company, oh, we've done it. No, no more growth. We're just going to sit on this, annuity revenue now, because as a friend of mine, Gavin, said to me only today, it's like, no, 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 no. There's always more growth. So, why wouldn't they go into content and curriculum and do something interesting there?
No, I agree with you in the sense of why don't they? In the sense of, that it's just historically, they've always
Yeah.
separated themselves. I remember when we were in Sims, we were talking to Twinkle for a long time, and Twinkle were really successful, but it never could really, we never got it to really work, and for one reason or another, it just never did. But
Well, that's an interesting. It's an interesting one because that kind of spans the. My understanding is that's like husband and wife teachers um, that have been incredibly successful, but now they are
amazingly.
big and they've had a load of private sector investments. So are they still the fluffy company that they were? You might not be able to tell me.
I don't know, but I should imagine. I think based on what people say, it sounds like the brand. They've kept the brand, very, still very educationally focused. And when you say fluffy, I mean, people perceive them as this great sort of grow company that's grown organically
Mhm.
from like you say, the husband and wife sort of type scenario. So and teachers, so within the sector as well. So I think they've kept hold of that brand, in my understanding. Obviously, they've gone international. They're big in America as well now. So I think there's an element where I'm not sure if the brand has gone across the water or
Mhm.
not, and we'd need to understand that. But in the sense of, can a PE bring together a back office and front, and the classroom systems together, and basically sell it as a package and brand it as a single package? I do think it will be hard for the first person that does it, because I think there is an element when you're buying as a school, and you're a governor, you can tell me, but I think there's an element where I think when so teachers, I think, like buying things that other teachers use.
Yeah.
And so where the back office, I think there's an element where they do the same, but they like, the back office systems. that other back office system. So it's almost the personas of the people you're selling to or the users are different. So I think that's why it's,
Yeah.
that would be my perception. By the way, I don't know. It's my perception.
Well, I guess that opens up another sort of perennial problem that the big acquirers have. So whether it's Access Group or Iris or Juniper, they'll buy a bunch of companies, I guess, under the assumption that, oh, this is fantastic. We've now got 10,000 schools,
Hmm.
with a single product in 2,000 each, say, and we now can cross sell, upsell, and it doesn't always work that way, because I think, again, they're more conscious of the product than the brand. It's not like there's no Burberry or Rolls Royce or Ferrari in the education world. You're not buying it for its brand. Although I
Yeah.
do think Arbor have done a good job of making themselves quite brand aware, but the cross sell upsell has undone a lot of companies in terms of what they thought they could do, growth wise, and what they have done. And I think that's that comes down to perhaps maybe they need better branding, better digital marketing, better messaging. But it's a problem that they've all walked into. And it's interesting because you've got Iris, Access Group, Juniper bought companies, and they've all then sort of taken on the parent company brand.
Yeah.
And then you had the one company that wasn't doing that, which was Supporting Education Group, which kept all of its brands siloed. But I believe that they've gone through, or they are going through, a big rationalization of that. They're smashing four brands together, and they're breaking a few eggs, my understanding is, and they've hemorrhaged quite a few good people that have not been quite impressed by the way that that's been done.
It's always going to be hard though, isn't it? When a company basically makes a massive decision to go into a different direction, there's
Yeah,
always going to be people who are going to go, no, this isn't
yeah,
for me. Which is right.
yeah, of course.
When you join a company, you basically join it with the understanding this is the vision they sell to you, and you sell your vision to them almost.
Mhm.
So I think that so it's the right thing. I think yeah, I think maybe also it's quite a big thing to chew, isn't it? So if you had a whole load of back office solutions, and then you also had a load of classroom solutions, that's quite a lot of.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it can't be done, because obviously the Microsofts of the world and other people do, but that's a lot of product and a
And
lot
it's
of, like you say, branding and also the same sort of marketing approach. How do you join them together? What's the messaging going to be? In relation to, do you know, we feel that we basically complete your vision for a school. We're everything for your school. That's quite a big
there's I
big.
guess a big risk as well if everything's on AWS, and the cloud that supposedly never was going to go down goes down.
Yeah, don't say that to
Effectively shut your school.
yeah. You're right. If you've got all your eggs in one basket, that is also potentially a bit of a problem in some ways. Yeah, I think the market is going to be really interesting. The more the data becomes more available, I think the more you'll find smaller solutions, and you'll find more, and in some ways, more competition as well. So I
Mhm.
think it's going to be really interesting what the next 3 to 4 years are going to be.
And what are your thoughts? So other than Twinkle, who's done the internationalizing well? Because I've seen a couple of guys I know, the EdV guys, Jamie Sotherington, and a
Yeah.
few of his compadres, and they're sort of looking to internationalize UK companies. I mean, is anyone doing it well? And I saw also Anago coming over to the UK, the Dutch finance company. So we've definitely we're seeing foreign companies doing well over here. I just wondered if we've got any
Biggies.
horses at the race on the other side of things.
I'll tell you what, this has not been like any other past that I've done. But Jim, amazing. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy bloke, and I
No,
know that there's lots going on at the moment in your world regarding recruitment, and also working with lots of different companies within the edtech world. And if anybody out there, you've enjoyed this and you're looking for some really high quality sort of C-suite people, then definitely don't forget to give Jim a call, because I'm sure he'll be more than welcome to have a conversation. But yeah, thanks again, Jim. Your insights into the edtech market are amazing. Yeah, it's been great chatting with you for sure.
Well, Nick, I'm blushing. Thank you very, very, very much for your kind words from the most respected business consultant in the education technology sector globally.
Globally, thank you.
And the most handsome.
Well, no, I think you still get it with your beard, you know, and your locks.
So, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. And if I don't see you before Bet, then I'll see you at Bet.
Absolutely, for sure. Excellent.
Right.
Well, the people can see us at the Fox for sure.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.